Today we're talking about legacy, maintaining a legacy and managing assets. Anybody have a legacy they want to leave? Because if you don't have a legacy,
whether you know it or not.
yeah, I was going to say, if you don't, you will have a legacy that you're leaving.
Yes, what's your interpretation of a legacy?
Exactly.
Right. What is your interpretation of a legacy?
100,000 in a house, 200,000. Legacy would be
Legacy.
getting into the.
Right.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Legacy can be financial. It could also be completely not financial in my mind, and it's the memories that I'm leaving behind. What is the legacy that I leave my kids? Am I leaving my kids a house full of stuff that they don't know what to do with and they don't want and feel guilty liquidating it? That could be my legacy. Not, yeah, not planning well and leaving them with a bunch of stuff to have to deal with could be my legacy. So we're going to talk about all those type of things and maybe help you get your arms around some of that and maybe be proactive so that the legacy that you do leave is a legacy that you want to leave. Does that make sense? Okay. So Sean, Sean's one thing I didn't ask you to do, so I apologize. Thank you, Coach. We're going could you mind, we've done this before, just a couple of times. Would you mind introducing yourselves? Holding the microphone if you don't mind, because folks in TV land are going to get a chance to see this, and this is being recorded and will be on OFallonTV and YouTube. Okay, so if you want to go back and listen to it again, you can do that, and you can also find it on the Senior Learning Institute website if you need another way of finding it. If you don't mind, introduce yourself, Sean.
So do we need to do a sound check, or is this good? Okay, cool. So I'm going to stand up. I generally stand up when I speak, just because if I'm sitting, I sort of kind of get a little nervous. So my name is Sean Estep. I'm principal attorney with the Estep Law Firm. We're an estate planning and elder law firm in Chesterfield. I've been doing this for about 30 years.
Hello, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Does everyone have their holiday shopping done? Mine was done November 1st. That's the only thing you need to know about me, okay? I'm Stacy Flanagan. I'm a certified financial planner as well as a certified senior advisor. I'm a wealth management advisor, aka financial advisor, at Visionary. I have been in the business 13 years. I work with individuals such as yourself, seniors, children of aging parents, as well as individuals that go in the transition of the death or divorce of a spouse. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Drew Ishmael, also a financial advisor, CFP, not a CSA, bunch of other things and initials, but I've been in the industry 25 years as a financial advisor, 13, so I was a supervisor prior to that. My specialty is really getting people from where they're at to where they need to go. Legacy is the thing that really matters to me. It's one of the things that Stacy and I have a lot of agreement on is legacy. So it's not just $1 million. It's whatever you want it to be. What you really want your family or the people that you've chosen to come behind you. And that's why I sit on these panels and why I love what Ted's doing. So,
Thank you. Everybody here okay? All right, if they need to speak up, just give them one of these, and they'll do that. Not one of these. One of these. It's got to be two-handed. All right.
You can also say Alexa up.
Right. Okay. So one of the questions that I don't have written down is I think it's important that we understand there are differences in what attorneys specialize in, and someone who is a generalist of sorts who does everything from tickets to estate planning to litigation to whatever it is going to be is one way of going about it, and there are other attorneys that specialize in certain fields. And I perceive Sean as specializing in a particular field. So could you explain to us what an estate planning / elder law attorney does and how that differs from a generalist?
Okay, Ted, that's a great question. So, as Ted said, there are attorneys that have a general practice, and they have software that helps them create wills and trusts and powers of attorney. And what they're doing is they're creating a set of documents that someone has said they want, okay? And that's a wonderful thing to have. It's a wonderful thing to be able to get those documents done. What that person doesn't have is the background, the training, or the amount of time in grade, as they used to say, in how to do a plan. Because that trust, that will, is the same one they use for everybody. when I create an estate plan, because I'm an estate planning attorney, everybody that comes into the office has a different set of challenges. They have different family members. There are different things they need to deal with, whether it's children that are great, they have kids, they have grandkids, and that person just needs to make sure that if something happens and they've transferred this legacy to their children, that divorce doesn't cause it to go to someone other than their family, that if they get sued, that it doesn't go to somebody other than their family, if they have a catastrophic healthcare event, that it doesn't end up at the hospital or the nursing home instead of in their family's pockets, okay? That's what we talk about when we talk about protecting legacy. But I was talking to Patty and Fred over here earlier, and I asked them if they knew about pastrami sandwiches and how life is like a pastrami sandwich. Remember that? Has anybody heard that? So most people think of the bread in the pastrami sandwich. You know, you're born, you die. I want to figure out my legacy because when I die, I want my stuff to go to my kids or I want my stuff to go to charity. But guess what? There's a lot of stuff in between those two pieces of bread and a pastrami sandwich. And depending on where you go, there's a lot of pastrami in there, right? Maybe some mustard. Okay. So we need also plan for what's in the middle. And I work with Stacy and Drew on the middle part with you guys. So the things we want to make sure we deal with are what happens if you're in an accident? What happens if you have a claim against you? Do we need to set aside money so you still have lifestyle, still have dignity? Doesn't it make sense to protect that too? Not just what happens when when you're gone, what happens to your stuff. But what happens to your stuff while you're alive? Does anybody care? Yeah? Okay. So that's what we're here for too. It's that beef in the middle between the two pieces of bread that we need to talk about. Also, there's incapacity, right? We don't talk about that often, do we? Has anybody had that conversation with an attorney before? What happened? Good, okay. So that's pretty rare then, if only one person out of, 20 has had that conversation with an attorney. What happens if you become incapacitated? What happens if you need nursing home care? Have you guys had that conversation with an attorney yet? Okay, we have 1 out of 20, okay? So that's about right. That's about right. Okay, so you just aren't having those conversations. So when you go to that generalist and you have the conversation with a generalist, you're getting a trust, you're getting a will, you're getting a power of attorney for finance, power of attorney for health care. Maybe you get a HIPAA release. Maybe you get a living will, okay? Those are all great documents. Does everybody have those? But see, you didn't have that conversation with the attorney that you got that from, did you? So you don't know what's in that document. Okay? Do you know how that document works? Do you know what your job is? Did they talk about funding your trust? Good, we got a nod here. Did they talk about what happens if you're incapacitated? Did they ever talk to your family members that you have as decision makers for you? Do they have any education for them? Did they educate them about being beneficiaries? Isn't it important? Isn't it all part of being in between, on the meat, having those conversations? When you get that big red book or that pile of paper or whatever it is that you get from your attorney? That's the difference between a generalist, an estate planning, and elder law attorney, is you get a packet of documents from an attorney, from a generalist. Okay, you get a plan and you get support from an estate planning and elder law attorney, okay? That's why I work real well with these two, because they're planners, they're financial planners. They don't sit there and say, hey, you need an IRA, you need a 401k, you need an insurance policy. They say, who are you? What do you need? How can I help you? Okay? That's the difference, again, between somebody that just sells stuff and somebody that's a planner. Okay? Did I answer your question?
It does.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Any questions so far? Yeah, so this is really critical. Oftentimes I'll come in and I'll have one hat on, and then I start to say, can I put my certified senior advisor hat on? And they'll say, well, what are you talking about? I say, well, I've got some questions. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about what kind of plans you have in place? Do you have an elder law or estate planning attorney? Do you have a financial advisor? Have you thought about these things? How are these things going to impact the sale of your home, or the sale of your home going to impact the planning that's been done or hasn't been done. So we often have these conversations, and more often than not, most people are not as far along as you are as to have made many, if any, plans. And I see this as a team sport, and we've worked together as a team where I will bring in and say, let's sit down with Sean, let's sit down with Stacy, let's sit down with Drew as a team, and let's talk through this because it's all interrelated. I also find that families don't communicate well with each other, oftentimes. So who's the beneficiary, as you mentioned, is going to be, and who's going to be the trustee, and all those things, and does that person know what the rules and what the roles are supposed to be and everything else, or is it going to be a big surprise at the end? Who gets to make those decisions for you if you can't make them yourselves? It gets very complicated, and I don't know about you, but oftentimes I find that some families don't communicate well.
No, not at all. Most families really communicate really well. Like my daughters, they don't really talk to each other very often. They really don't. So Ted's right. Some of the things you have to recognize is that really when they get that big red book or pile of papers, they really need to have had some sort of conversation with you about what their role is going to be, or have some sort of training from an attorney that trains your successors. And that's really a communication process. There's actually a book, and I keep threatening to bring it in. It's called I think it's called The Other Conversation, and it's a book written, and I think it's available through AARP and other places, and that helps you understand how to speak with your kids. So you sort of hand it off to them after you're done with it, so they understand what a conversation amongst you should be about: living, incapacity, nursing homes, passing away, what to do, who to do it with, and how to get that information. Okay? Does that sort of make some sense? Because how many of us can really talk to our spouses, much less our kids, about those kind of things? It's kind of hard, isn't it, sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife and I have had a conversation for about 3 minutes total about how we are going to be taken care of if we pass away. Guess what? I have that conversation with people every day, and I can't talk to my wife about it. That tells you what being a professional can be. It's a little scary sometimes to talk to your spouse about the things you can talk about with people that are strangers on a day-to-day basis.
Well, yeah, it's.
We got a question here.
What was the name of that book again?
I think it's called The Other Conversation. What I'll do is I'll let Ted know what it is. Did I hear somebody say what it was?
Double tap.
Yeah. And it's really a wonderful book, again, about communicating. And that's another thing that you have to understand about estate planning and elder law attorneys versus a generalist, is that you're having a conversation with a human being. They're getting to know you. They're not asking you who the people are that are going to make decisions. They're going to ask you to explain who that person is, and are they the right person to make that decision. I have a client down in Springfield whose daughter lives in China, okay? She is their first person to be a decision maker. Why? Because the other 4 kids are not capable of making that decision, even though they live locally. Okay? She lives in Taiwan, which is, I know, the Chinese like Taiwan, right? So our goal is to understand who the right people are. Okay? What if the people you have asked can't actually perform the way you want to, or you just don't have people? How many of you don't have decision makers that you trust? Wow, that's good. Sometimes I have people come in and say, I don't have family here. I don't have family at all. The people I know, I don't trust. How do you do that? How do you deal with that? That's not some
Backups, that's important too.
backups. Yeah. I generally ask for you to have 2 to 3 people listed, again, for backups.
Right. And a lot of these tools, which we're going to talk about in a minute, are here to help you maintain control. Here's my control story. Mom is 95 years old. My mom lives in Florida by herself. Dad passed away 3 years ago. My brother is very fiscally conservative. I'm a little less. The roof is 25 years old. The state of Florida says we'll give you 10 grand to replace that roof if you do it because mom's income. I want to replace the roof because I'm thinking it makes sense to replace the roof. It's going to save her 10 grand. And it's going to make the house more sellable when the time comes. My brother's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, if mom passes away before we fix the roof, that
same brother.
yeah, that grant goes away. So he's wanting mom not to do it. I'm in mom's ear telling her I think she should do it. And she looks at me and she says, you know what? Because I said, it's not my decision, it's Rob's decision. And she goes, you know what? It's not Rob's decision, it's my decision. Mom put me in my place. She said, it's my decision and I want to change out the roof. Roof still hasn't been changed, but she wants to do it. Now, the insurance company just came in and said in houses in Florida, they want to make sure roofs are somewhat newer. I think the insurance company didn't do me the service that I wanted, and I think they said it's okay. Their 25-year-old roof's still okay. So I may not win that one. But that's the conversations and communications we have, and in order to maintain control, Mom put me in my place. That's what some of these documents do that Sean's going to talk about. So let's talk about some of those documents that need to be in place in order to maintain control and to protect assets and to leave the legacy that we're looking for.
Okay, yeah, so let's start at the top. Revocable living trust. Has everybody heard of that? Yep, okay, good. Wills, right? Okay. Does anybody know what a will is? Okay, well, I'll talk about what they are, but I just want to list them first. Trust, will, power of attorney for finance, power of attorney for healthcare, HIPAA release, declaration, or otherwise known as a living will, and a medical directive. There are other ancillary documents I have in my office that make our plans work better, that are useful for other circumstances, but those are the primary documents that are in the package. Okay? Medical directive. Okay? How much time do we have to explain what those are?
We've got about a total of 5 minutes for all of it.
Okay. Well, that's not going to happen today.
I know.
So those are the documents. There's also one called an irrevocable trust that we use for Medicaid and veterans planning. And again, those are just tools we use to help you prepare, plan, and protect. Okay? Protect you during your lifetime, protect you if you become incapacitated, protect you if you have a catastrophic healthcare event, protect you and your children after you've passed away. Okay? Those are the important things to remember.
All right, a short description of what a will is and what it isn't, and let's talk about trust and the importance of the powers of attorneys. Just a short clinic on those.
Okay, perfect. So a will that everybody should have is a set of instructions to a probate court. So if somebody says, I've got a will so I can avoid probate, they've already told you that they don't know what they have. Okay? I like to call wills the e-ticket to probate.
What is probate?
Probate.
What is it?
It's a retirement plan for attorneys. Because we get a percentage of the estate to help a personal representative, that's that person that you name in your will to manage your stuff, all the things that you owned at your passing, that were not otherwise distributed under the what we call the Fabulous Five. Okay? Fabulous Five are joint ownership, transfer on death, pan death, beneficiary designation, beneficiary deed. Okay? The Fabulous Five. Okay? Those will allow you to potentially avoid probate on the death of a person. Okay? It doesn't work if the person that's a joint owner or a beneficiary under those other four predecease you or die at the same time. They don't work if you have somebody that's needing, it's like special needs care. Okay? I'm dealing with that right now. It doesn't work if a number of other things happen, so that money could end up in the hands of somebody that you don't want it to, because there are actually no instructions. It's just an automatic, it goes from this person to this person. If they're not alive, then it goes to this person. If they're not alive, it goes to whoever's left. Okay? Or it may go through probate anyway, if you don't have enough other names named. Okay? Otherwise, a will is just instructions to the probate court about what to do. They pay your bills and distribute to the persons that are in your will. It's called legatees. If you don't have a will, where does it go? Your heirs at law, after your creditors are paid. Okay? That's a will. A trust is a set of private instructions you have to a person called a trustee to take care of property you have that's owned by the trust or directed to the trust, and that's for the beneficiary. So again, it's a set of instructions for the trustee to take care of the beneficiary. Okay?
Question.
Yes.
If you have a trust and you're still alive, you're your own trustee typically, yes?
Generally speaking, you're your own trustee, your own beneficiary. You were the trust maker. You put the stuff in the bucket and gave the instructions to yourself.
And then
Generally speaking.
and then when you pass away, whoever is you appoint as will be the next trustee of the trust.
There'll be successors. Now, that's for a revocable trust. For an irrevocable trust, generally speaking, you are not going to be the trustee. You're not going to be the beneficiary, at least for Medicaid and veterans asset protection purposes, because we're giving that money away. Okay? So that's a quick explanation of the irrevocable trust. Powers of attorney for finance. Those give your decision makers, what people call agents or attorneys in fact, the ability to make decisions for you about finances. They can take care of your taxes. They can take care of anything that's not owned by the trust. Generally speaking, it's going to be cars, retirement plans like IRAs and 401ks. Okay? Then you're going to have powers of attorney for health care. That person's going to be able to make day-to-day decisions about your health care, whether it's medications and treatments, caregivers, physicians, hospitals, and nursing homes. Then you're going to have what's called a declaration. That's a living will. I'm connected to artificial life support. Please remove that and allow me to die naturally. Medical directive. It says there are a number of treatments and procedures. I prefer they be withdrawn by my family if they're not making a difference on my prognosis and not making me feel better. Okay?
So let me jump in.
One more.
Go ahead.
HIPAA release. Those people, the trustees, under the trust, personal representatives, under your will, powers of attorney for finance and healthcare, they're all going to need access to protected healthcare information, so they're going to need a HIPAA release, right? So that's the package. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
But the question on the advance directive, for instance, why that's important. I'll use Rob and I as an example. Loving brothers. I want to pull the plug. Rob says, I don't want to pull the plug. What did Mom say, and what are her directions? Help to avoid the conflict of making, and the guilt sometimes of making the decision which you think might be the right decision, which ultimately may not be what the wishes were. Drew.
I would love you to answer a question as well. What if I don't? So who are heirs at law? How does that work, and are they the same in every state?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, so the question Drew had was, what are heirs at law? Okay, and are they different in every state? So the general answer is heirs at law are going to be those people that are your descendants, okay, people that are related to you by blood. So my 4 kids, they're my descendants. My 7 grandkids are my descendants, except that my 3 daughters are bonus children, right? So they're really not blood relatives, so they're really not heirs at law. So I'm going to take that back, which means 6 of my 7 grandchildren are not heirs at law of me. So I got to take that back. And their dogs aren't my heirs at law either. So, you know, those dogs are going to be out of Alpo. So heirs at law are going to be your blood descendants. So my son's my blood descendant, my granddaughter's my blood descendant. What if I don't? Yes, ma'am.
Adopted children,
I wish.
descendants?
Yes.
Yes.
I thought you were asking, were my daughters adopted?
They're my
So that's that, right. So they are by law now your descendants because you've adopted them. One of my daughters asked me if I would adopt her. I'm like, yes, absolutely. My eldest daughter. So like, anytime now, if you want me to adopt you, let's do it. But so that's heirs at law going down. What happens if you have no descendants? Then we look to your parents if your parents are still alive. Okay? Then they're going to be, under Missouri law, that your parents are going to share your legacy with your brothers and sisters, if you have any. If a brother or sister is deceased, then it goes to their children equally. Okay? If you have they have no children, then and you have no parents and no siblings, we'll go to the next level to your grandparents. And we'll start looking at aunts and uncles. Okay? So that's heirs at law. Again, so look at your descendants, your blood relatives. Look to your parents next and siblings. If your siblings have no children or have predeceased, then we look to their children. If there are no siblings, no parents, we look to the grandparents and then aunts and uncles. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
So the reason I asked that question is we live in a society of very blended families. True. And the reason I asked that question is we live in a society of very blended families, and I'm married a second time. My wife and I have no biological children, but she's been around since my kids before they knew how to speak well. So they believe she's mom. She believes they're kids. So she has two moms, or my kids have two moms, which is awesome. Point being is my wife would be heartbroken if her assets didn't go to our children. Heartbroken. So having something written out is so important, and a trust makes it easier. This is my sales pitch for Sean, because it just allows you to control what happens to the hard work that you've given your whole life.
Thank you. All right, so real life story, then we're going to move on to Stacy. I got contacted by the son whose mother is 72 years old, moving to Viva Bene. His mom, has a mother who's still alive at 100 years old. When I go in and we start talking real estate, I often get information about title and how things are titled so that we have a feel for who has the right to sell and are there any liens on the house and all those type of things. Well, I looked at Grandma's information, and Grandma has her daughter and her son as beneficiaries on, so the beneficiary deed on this property. But Mom, who's planning, doesn't have a whole lot of money, is planning on using Medicaid eventually to fund her stay wherever she's going after Viva Bene. So when Grandma sells her house and puts $100,000 or more into her daughter's pocket, that impacts her ability to qualify or for Medicaid and a variety of different things based upon assets and how much money she's going to have to actually spend before Medicaid kicks in. So this is all interrelated. And though we might have it titled a certain way, it may not be in our best interest if we're planning on doing something else long term. So that's why sitting with an attorney makes sense. Most attorneys will sit down with you without cost or obligation or at a very low rate so that you can have these conversations and explore things. I'm not looking at Sean right now. He's either shaking his head, yes, I'll meet for no cost or obligation, or whether he won't.
I didn't shake my head either way.
Good lawyer.
There he is.
It depends.
It depends, right? There you go. Thank you. All right, Stacy. So you do a really good job sitting down and talking with folks who may not have thought about the legacy conversation as part of what you do, exploratory. Tell us a little bit more about. I think we all now understand why you do that, but let's talk to us about that conversation. How do you go about it?
First, am I going to lose credit if I don't stand up and pace the room like Sean? Or okay, because I'm going to stay seated. It's comfy. You will notice that I inject a lot of humor into these conversations because these conversations are not fun. All right, they're very serious. We don't like to talk about them. We put them off. So I do believe that you need to have some sort of laugh along the way. So either forgive me or laugh with me. It's truly your choice. All right, so when it comes to legacy planning, I use the phrase conceptualize your legacy so you can plan for it. I will talk about the financial piece because I'm a financial advisor. And I think we opened up this seminar with, hey, what is a legacy? And we were all very kind of like divided on it, or there was a sprinkling or a gray area of what that truly means. When it comes to financial planning, conceptualizing your legacy is going to help you plan for your retirement, and it's going to change the way your retirement plan looks like. So if, for example, you worked really hard and you are wanting to provide for the future generations of your children, that's amazing. That's going to change how much you spend, how it's invested, et cetera. But maybe John and Jane, your children, are incredibly successful and you've launched them out of the nest, so to speak, and they look at you and say, Mom and Dad, this money is for you to enjoy. That certainly changes how much you're going to spend and how you invest that money. It's also, you can have a mix of all of these things, but then there's also charitable legacies. If you just feel so passionate, that is one way to leave this earth with a beautiful, beautiful legacy. And then I have other folks who, when they don't have children, they believe they don't have a legacy. That's not the case. Again, charity. Or I have folks that say they want to bounce their last check. So that means I am just spending I worked so hard, I am living my life, I cannot take this with me. Well, that certainly affects how I'm going to invest your money and what we're going to spend, right? We can maybe be a little bit more aggressive because you're willing to take on that risk. You're not planning for something after you pass away. So there's just so many different scenarios to look at it, and it's truly not black and white. When we think of legacy planning, I truly believe that people immediately think inheritance for children, and how do we protect that? And it's much more.
I had a great question, and it completely just went out of my head, my 64-year-old head. So how often do mom and dad, parents, us in the room, include the children in these conversations? Is it a surprise at the end?
Fortunately, most of the time it's surprise. So there's a saying in estate planning, you complete your estate plans and you plan for all this, not for yourself, but for your family, so that they are able to facilitate your wishes without a lot of grief mixed in with that. And unfortunately, the conversations are not had. And especially in situations, blended families or children that it's just like not equal in terms of their ability to facilitate your wishes. I will use myself, for example. I am the youngest of 5 siblings, but I am the power of attorney, trustee, what have you. My mother does not have a lot by any means. It's kind of why I went into what I do. And I will be the one facilitating all of this. It's very helpful that I know that, and so that it's not a shock. I have a brother, unfortunately, that has been disinherited. When my mother was going through chemotherapy, he stole her credit card, and it was just horrible. Among other things that he's done in his life, he has been disinherited, or actually already spent his inheritance, if we think about it. That is going to be a conversation that my mom, and that's up to her, doesn't want to have right now with him. That's going to be on me. So she has enough respect for me to know that that's going to be on for me. And so we can have these conversations, and I can be prepared mentally, financially, emotionally. And when it comes to involving your kids, if you talk about it earlier and often, and maybe inject some humor and maybe some wine and maybe a happy hour, right? Like it's unfortunately and uncomfortable and it almost feels like a taboo topic to talk about mom and dad passing away, but it is inevitable. In a perfect world, your children will outlive you. And so early, often, include them. You don't have to give them the full details, but make sure they know where to get the documents. My gosh, that's so helpful. Not a safety deposit box that they don't have a key to, right? We don't want to spend money on these documents and all this planning and then it's tucked away. If it's tucked away and it's like it doesn't exist if you can't find it. So early, often, just become more comfortable with it.
I would say humor, exactly what Stacy said, humor is the thing. My kids are 25 and 24, and I tell them not to be crazy. I'll use that term. I use a different term. I was in the military for 23 years, and my wife still is. So we use different terms. But to our kids, we say, don't act a fool, otherwise you'll be out. But we tell them where they're at. We tell them where they're at. We tell them the way our trust is structured and who they got to talk to if something happens to us tomorrow. So they know all of those things. And they're 25 and 24. So it's never too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and we have those conversations with our kids, maybe not as much as the financial stuff, but they're starting to pick through some of the things that they know that they want, and we're starting to give things away. Last time they were in for Thanksgiving, half of the albums that I have that I collected as a kid are now in 2 different states because they wanted to take them home and they put them in luggage. And I mean, my Beatles stuff and all the stuff that I worked really hard to accumulate, they've got. Now, that to me, that's part of the legacy. When I was in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, I was with my daughter, and they've got their tree up, and I wanted to put something on the tree that I bought them. Now, I'm a Starbucks guy. My girls are Starbucks girls. And I said, I'm going to buy a Starbucks ornament and put it on the tree. So my biggest decision was, do I buy one that said 2025, which would require me to buy one at 2026, 2027, 2028, or do I buy just one generic one? I bought them a generic one. It's on the tree, and every time they look at it, my daughter's going to think of me. Those are the little things that I try to do now so that that's my legacy. okay? And I did tell them that I'm going to have a Starbucks card with a revolving credit on it so they can get a drink. I'm going to have to figure out how to maximize it to
Do they
one.
collect the mugs?
Right,
Like
to
the,
one a month. No, this is going to be they can actually go to a store and use my card, but I have to figure out a way to regulate it so it's only one a month. Otherwise, they're going to bankrupt the family in a very short period of time. Okay, I got to figure that one out. Maybe you can help me with that. Okay. My mom, still alive. My brother and I know what it is that we're getting that meant something to us. I broke a vase for my mother when I was 6 years old. My dad put it back together with modeling glue. My name is on the bottom of that, so that every time I see that, I think about what a lousy kid I was, but I broke my mom's heirloom, okay? But those are the funny things and the things that we know that we're getting. Now, my brother and I think we're splitting whatever assets are available, if there's any assets. But those personal things really make a difference. Why not dedicate those things or give those things now? That's my philosophy. Is I'd rather see my kids enjoy it. My wife has already told me when we move, which is going to be in 5 to some odd years, nothing comes with us other than a couple pieces of furniture. So all the family heirlooms that my mom made me take that we haven't opened in 30 years, estate sale. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. Yeah. Okay. In the situations where, do you encourage the communication between parent and children? We kind of said, yes, you do. How do you help facilitate that? And how are you going to deal with your situation with your brother? Because I'm thinking, if I was in that role and I'm getting nothing and Rob's getting everything, I had something to do with it. I encouraged Mom to disinherit Teddy. That's what they call me.
Sure, I know I'm going to be the bad guy. I'm so mad at him, I don't know that I care. I'll be quite honest. So I'm okay being the bad guy. I could never imagine doing that to my mother, so it is what it is. It also helps that, like, yes, I am still set to inherit something. I promise you. It probably wouldn't even buy me a down payment on a car, okay? So we're not fighting over much, and that certainly helps. When it comes to my clients, though, I'm kind of a nagger. I'll bring it up in each and every meeting. Have we talked about that? I can be there. I can help facilitate this. You know, here's some prompts, and go from there. Can I jump into the next question, because I think it's relevant? So I bet. Okay, so the next question is, why is it important to have a caring financial advisor in these big times? How can you elaborate how you've helped? So I bet it's safe to say that everybody in this room or anyone watching has gone through moments of grief in their life. How hard was it to get things done in your life, whether that be your job, taking care of your parents, taking care of your kids, when you were going through grief? Incredibly difficult, right? Having somebody who knows your situation and who can check off the list and, for lack of a better word, get shit done for you is incredibly important, so that you can grieve, your children can grieve, and somebody else knows your situation and they can do a bulk of the work and then just kind of loop you in as needed. So I think that's probably the biggest feather in my cap is I've come into situations, unfortunately, multiple times of extreme grief and unexpected deaths, and I can say, I've got this. I will loop you in. And that's a really good feeling for clients.
Right. I find that the financial advisor, a good one, can be the spoke of the wheel. It's the person that you talk with, the quarterback, the person that you can go to and basically help you think about things that you may not be considering, but also refer you to people that you should be talking with. So I hope that a financial advisor that I'm working with and know well will think about me when it comes to real estate, will think about me for other resources, things along those lines. So that's the person to go to. How many of you, if you walked into a venue and your financial advisor was standing behind you, would your financial advisor recognize who you were?
Better.
Yes, yes. I had one that didn't, and not only once, but twice.
More common than you think.
I had to reintroduce myself to my financial advisor who didn't know who I was. And whenever I tried to call that financial advisor around noon, because that was a good time for me, he was out to lunch from 11 to 2. Almost every time I tried to call.
Or golfing.
Or golfing. Not to say that all financial advisors golf. So Drew's at the gun range. Just kidding. Okay, so, right, okay. But you get my point. The person who I think you should have a really close, not intimate, but intimate relationship with is the person who's managing your money if you have somebody managing your money. If you don't have somebody managing your money, and I've had clients who haven't, some have done very, very well, some have missed some opportunities, that's a personal decision as to whether you hire a financial advisor or not. Okay? I won't even ask that question. What else you got for us other than frequency of how often do you reach out to your folks, or do they reach out to you?
Oh, it's a two-way. But I some clients prefer a very set schedule, but for me, I'm kind of just always pinging them with thinking about them with ideas. We've got certain things we do at certain times of the year. I'm communicating with the estate attorney because we open an account, and I can coordinate with them that way. And so that's all incredibly helpful to have cohesively.
Right. Okay. Any questions of Stacy? All right, we're going to, yes.
A lot of the paperwork I have, I just want to make sure I don't need to update it. It's like 10 years old.
Oh, certainly. So what they say, every 3 years to look at it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you want me to
Yeah.
answer that? Okay. That's a good question, because I've got to leave in 8 minutes. You got me. So generally speaking, what I ask my clients is, do you feel like things are going to change pretty quickly for you? So my younger clients are like, yeah, we're going to have more kids. And our older clients are, yeah, we're getting older, we're going to move, we may need to move into assisted living. So it's based largely on what the client's needs are. We have clients on a 3-year update program, on an annual program. Other clients just say, hey, I'll see you when I see you.
Or when the law
Okay.
changes.
Or when the law changes.
Yeah.
And what we try to do, and this is not particularly rare, is we let our clients know when things change. So we've got this big, beautiful bill that came out this year. How does that change your taxes? How does that change things about you? So we try to make sure we create a newsletter. We're working on a new program, so we'll have more access to those kinds of things for you guys, for our clients. But you should update your documents and look at your plan first, make sure that it needs to be changed, and then change things like ancillaries. Powers of attorney for finance and healthcare, HIPAA release, declaration, medical directive. Your trusts, unless something changes, they're probably okay, but you should make sure that the plan you had still makes sense, that the same beneficiaries are going to be treated the same way. Make sense? To answer the question? Yes, ma'am.
If you have a trust, do you need a will?
Yes, because if you have a trust, it's a possibility that you'll buy something just before you pass away, and we want to make sure that we get that asset from you as an individual into your trust. And so it's called a pour-over will. We lovingly call it the legal pooper scooper in our office. So it scoops things up and puts them back into the trust. But as I said, you still have to go through the probate process, and then there's, in Missouri, we have a minimum fee for doing probate as a percentage of the estate, and it's somewhere between 2 and 3% of the value of the estate. So
Is it the probatable estate or the estate in general of what your fee comes?
it comes from the probatable assets,
Okay.
okay? And those are going to be anything you owned individually on your passing, okay?
Right. And wills are also public, right? So I could go into the city records in St. Charles County and look and see who passed away and who got what, right?
Correct.
So if privacy is something that you want, trusts tend to work better as it relates to that, because with just a will and probate, anybody can see how much Bobby got as a inheritance. And then people go, I assume, want to start talking to Bobby a little bit more than they did before. Yes? Okay. Drew, strategies that you use, financial advisor as well, to help protect assets. How do you go about the exploratory process, and some of the strategies that you use to protect assets from inflation and market volatility and unexpected events?
Okay. Not like a small question.
In 30 seconds or less.
Right. So he asked a really important question, kind of snuck it in the middle there, and it was, what's my discovery process? So I don't like to do business with robots. I don't like to do business with non-people. So I treat you as an individual. In every conversation, we always have individuals, right? And a lot of people believe that it's formulaic in the way we do things. First and foremost, first conversation is always a get to know you. Figure out if we are a good fit, if we like each other. I mean, you don't have to love your financial advisor, but we should at least be able to be cordial and enjoy each other's company a little bit.
And not dread the conversation every time we meet, yeah.
Exactly. And that goes both ways.
Save that for your lawyer. Save the dread.
The dread definitely goes for your lawyer. But also we talk about what's the most important thing to you. Obviously for me, and I'll use me, and I have this conversation with my wife, and going back to the professional aspect, my wife and I talk about death. We're both military. We've both been deployed multiple times. Death is not a big deal for us. What we have a hard time talking about is living long. So that is a big thing for us because her father, my father, we've had challenges that way, and it's caused a lot of pain in our lives. So what we have a hard time with is that long life conversation. So even though we have all these great conversations, it's difficult. And so I use Sean to mitigate that in my house. So use one of us up here, use your financial advisor, your attorney, but have that conversation with the people that matter in your life. That's the biggest thing. But for me, it's living well, living like I do now in my post-work life. My wife and I agree on that. But her second thing is, medical. My second thing is legacy. That is the second most important thing. And when we eliminate the first thing, which is just kind of table stakes, that is the most important thing for me. It's not the most important thing for my wife. So if we're working in pairs, you got to figure out how that works. But I discuss what's the most important things in everybody's life, and we work through those problems in order. It becomes a simple math problem for a lot of it, but how you want to be communicated with, how you want your life to be remembered has a lot to do with your finances, unfortunately. It's just what is. I have a friend that believes he wants his great-great-grandchildren to know his name. Who knows their great-great-grandparent? Remember, that's grandparent is your parent's parent, great-grandparent is your parent's grandparent, and then your great-great-grandparent is your parent's great-grandparent. Right, so nobody does here, right? So.
Oh, no, it's good.
I'm just curious.
Well, my great.
James Shackelford.
Oh, that would be farther than great.
No, that's great.
Okay. Wow. Okay, one of us in the room. Mine were in the old country, whichever old country. It's either Germany or Italy or England or Ireland or Scotland. But point being is we discover what's important to you, and then we set priorities based on what's important to you, and we work through those priorities. Now, he also asked me how I manage money. There's a lot of ways in which we can manage money, but the first things first is we talk about what's your risk comfort. And I say comfort because my job is to explain how the economy works and how the markets work. And there's not just one market, right? There's many markets. People think the stock market is the only market out there. Well, the bond market's about 4 times the size of the stock market. Also, as Sean leaves, once we start talking about income.
Very much. It was good talking to all of you.
So we use markets against each other. We use the bond market against the stock market, so the traditional diversification tools. But the bond market is slower than the stock market, not necessarily safer. They're both markets. So we talk about that as a hedge against inflation, whether it's stocks or bonds, or do we really want extra protection and use an insurance product? Do we use structured products? Do we use private equity? Do we use assets that are considered alternatives? Do we use gold, silver, or a basket of commodities? all of that depends on several things: is A, your risk tolerance, B, your comfort level and understanding. Those things together, also how long you're going to be spending the money, right? So we talk about a lot of personal things. I don't know about Stacy, but I tell everybody during those first couple of conversations, we're going to have a lot of conversations. And the last time you answered a question like this was with your doctor. Not that I need to know all your medical history, but we need to know kind of how long do you expect this money to be needed and what your goals with it. So market volatility, multiple markets, all the things.
To me right now, I'm thinking about maintaining whatever little assets I have. Okay, so conversation I have with my financial advisor is how do we make sure that we're balanced? What's the hedge against a market correction? I keep reading about market corrections. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Right now it's not coming, and I'm glad I'm in the market. But when it comes, I'm not going to be glad I'm in the market. So how do I time it? I'm not going to be able to time it. So what do I do to help balance that portfolio so I can keep as much as I possibly can, because I'm depending upon that for retirement, right? So these are conversations, and unless you're really attuned to that personally and you spend a lot of time doing that, I think that's where you get your money's worth out of a financial advisor. One of the things I didn't ask and wasn't going to ask, but let's talk about how financial advisors get paid, because one of the things I love to do is throw them under the bus as much as I can, not just financial advisors, but my panelists. Oftentimes I'll have senior living communities come here and they'll say how wonderful they are and this is what they do, and I forget to ask, what's it cost to live there? And that's pretty important when you're talking about $5,000 to $10,000 to $12,000 a month, right? So I forget to ask that sometimes, but for some reason I didn't forget to ask that this time. So if you're managing your own money, you may think in your mind that I'm saving 1%, 2%, whatever it's going to be. And so I wanted you to get a feel for how they all get paid so that you can kind of understand what the value might be as it relates to, because if they could yield you 10, 15% or whatever that number is, and they cost you 1 or 2%, does it make sense to use them if you're only getting 5% in your own? I don't know. So I'm asking the question, how do financial advisors get paid?
So financial advisors can get paid in multiple ways. There's fee for service, which means they advise you and they do nothing with your assets. You go and do the advice, and you pay for the time. That's then there. But no. That's fee for service. Then there's then the transactional is the commission based. Now, that was the way things were done forever. Yeah. And commissions have actually come way down. So a lot of people will argue on both sides of that conversation. Well, if there's a commission, then all they care about is the sale. Not necessarily, because they want to keep the assets, but then there's fee for management. That's based on the amount of assets you have under management with that financial advisor. That fee is based usually on a percentage, and that is the majority of the way I get paid. I do get paid on commission for certain products. Life insurance or insurance products is almost exclusively still commission based. There's like 2 or 3 annuity companies that do a fee annuity that fits in there, but that cost can be more than the traditional annuity cost, which is already pretty high. And I say that not saying it's a bad thing for it to be high. It's just you pay for what you get sometimes, and sometimes you pay way too much for it.
Yes.
So we're structured the same. So usually assets under management fee and then commissions on insurance, like he mentioned. I like to give an analogy. We're paid by our clients, not by the product when it comes to investing. And so you might see certain investments pay advisors better than others, and it might be a conflict of interest if you think about it. If one pays better than another, they might recommend that. So when you're paid by your client and not by the products, you can have full faith that we're recommending it because we think it's in your best interest and it's going to do you well, and not because it happens to pay better than investment B. So I like to give that kind of...
Right. And the way I look at it as well as I'm going to hope that my financial advisor is going to put me in things that are going to make me more money, which will in turn compensate them more as well on that percentage.
The bigger your account gets, the bigger, our fee.
So there is some skin in the game.
We're aligned.
Yeah, there's some skin in the game there as well. So does that range, just not to pigeonhole you, but does that range of commission go anywhere from, or that fee range anywhere from around a point to a point and a half to 2 points? What are we looking at?
Totally depends on the people you go with,
Size of your account.
the size of your accounts, all of that, because the work doesn't necessarily go down for a smaller account. The time investment doesn't. So sometimes a smaller account, and determine that for what you will be more. Sometimes it won't. Depends on who you go to. Now, I don't want to pigeonhole anybody in there and how much they charge. I tend to be on below the average just because, I can afford it. I left another company for the sole purpose of lowering my fee and getting more freedom. So that was mine.
So just like the attorney, it depends. See, I'm trying to get a number out of them, and I can't get a number out of them.
Well, because I don't want to. Here's the thing: is somebody in this audience maybe pays 2.5%, and it's actually a value because they feel comfortable.
Right.
That's not what I charge.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
So can I leave it at saying it's negotiable, it's dependent upon who you're working with, depending upon assets? Ask the question if you're going to be interviewing other people or talking to other people. How many of you know what your financial advisor is charging you? Okay. If you don't, that's probably a good thing to look at if you have a financial advisor.
So with me, and I'm assuming you sign a document, and it says on the document.
It's a line item on your account, so it's very transparent.
So you get to see it. You mentioned insurance, and I want to talk a little bit about insurance products in general and long-term care insurance specifically, though I think for some of us, long-term care insurance, we might have, if we don't already have it, we might have missed that boat. But let's talk about that a little bit.
So what's the one truism of insurance?
You hope you never get to use it, never need to use it.
Well, that's A, but the one I'm thinking of is it's always too expensive. It's always too expensive.
Never a fun expense.
Exactly. And if you think of it as a cost, it will always be too expensive. What you're saving is I have a client, it's an interesting client. Anyway, he is an amazing guy. He's a good human. He's my age. I'm trying to get him to think through the process of buying long-term care insurance when he's in his 50s and buying the product. He can't get over the fact of the cost of it, even though I showed him the cost, the potential cost, and usually when it starts, and he has all of the earmarks in his family biologically to have to need some long-term care. Healthy bodies, minds that slip a little bit. So he knows that he's going to need it, and he would rather pay it over time out of his own pocket than get, 25% to 75% off of that cost because of investing that money ahead of time. So we're using a different strategy. I can't get him to change his mind. It's an interesting conversation that I tell him every year I'm going to have this conversation with him and we're going to fight about it. But I do that because I want him to understand that it goes up, and I give him the cost every year, and it's 10%. It goes up every year. It's just what is. That's the way the insurance company has to guarantee them making money. I say long-term care has repriced and is always more expensive than you think it is. There used to be, I don't even know if it was 100 companies that offered long-term care, and they kind of thought it was a racket, like earthquake insurance in California, right? We're all just going to declare bankruptcy once the big one hits anyway, no big deal, right? We'll just make money while we can. That's what they thought. Unfortunately, everybody started living a lot longer, and so these unlimited caps of insurance bankrupted a bunch of insurance companies, or bankrupted that division that they spun out that was just long-term care. And so they, insurance companies are real good at making sure they still have their big buildings. Point being is long-term care is not the long-term care of the past. You don't have to be in a facility. You can live in your home. A lot of it is indemnity care, which means that you get the check, not the provider, the care provider. There's a bunch of different ways to go through long-term care, and that's a series unto itself. But that's definitely a conversation you need to have with your financial advisor. We both are purveyors of long-term care insurance. I beat the table about it in anybody over 50's meetings at least once a year. The reason is even the products that I use, even if you don't ever need it, your heirs get the money back in a lot of cases, almost all of it.
Use it or lose it, which is,
So, yeah, the new policies that are out there are newer. It's not just long-term care insurance. It's a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider to it. So there's still a death benefit if you don't use the long-term care portion of it. But if you use some of the long-term care portion, the death benefit is reduced by that amount. Does that sound about right?
Correct. So the first part that goes out is the death benefit. So they're insurance companies have big buildings because they win, right? But they provide something that is catastrophic to the average person. They provide care against the catastrophic issue. That's why we have car insurance and home insurance. And that's also why a lot of people carry life insurance, because they want a legacy or they want their spouse to have something. Long-term care insurance protects all of the work you've done your whole life.
Right. And one of the things that I've done, sometimes it gets too late to purchase the long-term care portion of these policies if you've had a life event. So I've encouraged my son-in-law, who's married to number 1 daughter, and my soon-to-be son-in-law, who will be married to number 2 daughter, that this is something that I want them to have in place before they marry my kid, okay? Because I'm concerned about my children and their family and everything else. So I've planted the seed already. So maybe if you take something home with you, if it's not something that you want to do, is talk to your kids about it. Because as soon as there's a life event, a health event, or something along those lines, it could preclude them from getting that long-term care rider, which could help the family in the long run. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's my gift to my son-in-law and my soon-to-be son-in-law. We have these conversations.
My encouragement with everybody is get it while you're still working, because then it's just another expense. And you just kind of bake it into your budget for the next couple of years. And we can work out from a single premium all the way to 10 or until you're 65 premiums. So there's ways to work that out to make it manageable, but it is expensive. There's nothing that we can say about that.
What is that cutoff age that you're talking about?
Depends on health a lot of the time. But it depends on health and depends on how much you're willing to spend.
Well, and I've got a policy right now that takes me out to over age 100 based upon the way this thing is structured. Okay, I'm probably not going to make it that long. I'm going for 120, but I doubt I'm going to make it. All right, so I think the earlier in life you take it, the longer.
yeah. So health for sure, number 1. But what the insurance company is doing is taking your premium and then telling you a benefit that you'll get from that. So the longer they have your money, the bigger that benefit will be. So the closer to you needing care, which they're kind of earmarking at like mid-70s, the less benefit you're going to get because they have less time to invest your dollars to make a profit themselves, give you what you need.
Right.
What you're saying is you could still get one at, say, 65.
Certainly.
Definitely.
Yeah, as long as the health is there. And so there's health underwriting and things along those lines that go along with these policies, yes?
Yes. So the indemnity policies tend to have less health underwriting. It's a conversation, pass or fail. It's yes or no. So it's not, some policies have gotten into more gradient like life insurance. But some of these long-term care policies, because they're only long-term care, take a lot of patient history into account and medical records. But that's basically it, age and medical records.
Typically, a phlebotomist or a nurse or someone will come to your house, take blood, ask you some questions. That's probably it. Right?
Sometimes, not always. Yeah.
So what you're really saying is, like you said, one of the keys is health,
Mm-hmm.
more so even over age.
So-
And it sounds like one of the better options, which I did not know that there was with long-term care, was that it's rolled in with a death benefit. That's new to me. That's intriguing.
So there's several types of long-term care. Dave Ramsey's a real big proponent still of the kind of pay-as-you-go long-term care, like the term-based long-term care. I stopped being a proponent of that once I saw what they did to everybody that turned 80.
Yeah.
They said, well, now your risk level is way high, so your premium is way high, and people had to cancel it, and then 2 years later they're needing it. They've just spent 15 years paying for it, and now they can't get it. So I use, and I'm sure from what she's saying, she uses a policy that you buy and you own. And that policy is yours. And so the insurance company is using your money during all the years that you're not. And so that death benefit, or not death benefit in this case, but long-term care benefit grows the longer you delay using it. So earlier is better. It gets longer growth time, longer inflation protection time, and there's all of these policies you can structure. So the conversation has to be, get through the underwriting process, because you can always say no. If it's not viable, you can always say no at that other end. Now, there's some precursors. If you already know that you're either in a wheelchair, or that you have significant disability, or if you're on government disability, you're not eligible for long-term care, because long-term care is the insurance against you living past a certain amount and having to have care. That's what it's there for, right? It's not death insurance. Right.
My policy, for instance, caps out at $10,000 a month if I use for long-term care. I actually have 2 term policies. I'm going to get rid of 1 term policy and try to buy more death benefit or more long-term care coverage on the back end, because I know if I go into assisted living, I'm looking at least $8,000 a month now. By the time I'm ready to use it, $15,000, $20,000 a month. That's what I'm guessing. Crazy, right? So I'm trying to do that now.
So we have a question.
All right. I have a mother-in-law who is 96. She bought, many years ago, a policy that would pay only for nursing homes. Is that true?
I don't know the policy, but they used to sell nursing home policies, yes. That can be, but having the conversation and getting the policy and sitting with somebody that you trust to read it over, that would make sense, because nursing home policies, also a lot of annuities that people own have a nursing home rider on them, and they don't even realize it. It's just kind of something they used to throw on for free, quote unquote. And what that allows is double the payout for as long as you're in a nursing home. So if that is the case, check those policies as well.
Yeah, it starts to get really complicated.
Yeah, well, she's in great health.
Good for her.
That's amazing, right? Hopefully she never has to use that insurance.
Good for her. All right. One of the things I want to do, Drew, you have anything else you want to add before I move on? Okay. So Pam wasn't able to be here, and Pam works for a company called Goldilocks Solutions. They're a company that does move management, meaning helping people move from home to their downsized home or to a senior living community or out of state and all of that. But one of the things that they do and do really well is what I call estate liquidation. So we have all this, I use the term stuff, whatever's you're not taking with you that has to be dealt with. And the question is, what do we do with it and who wants it? So I wanted to just talk a little bit about those concepts because not everybody earmarks those things. And sometimes the amount of stuff that we have keeps us where we don't necessarily want to be anymore. It becomes so overwhelming, the thought of 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 or plus years worth of stuff on our homes. Instead of dealing with it, we just decide to stay put and let somebody else deal with it. I've already said that's not the legacy that I want to have for my kids, and my wife has already let it be known, nothing's coming with us on our move, except for this, this, and this. The rest of it, someone's going to take. So either the girls take it or my son takes it, or we have to find a way to get rid of it, right? So how do we go about doing that? Anybody had the experience of having to deal with somebody else's stuff? How was it?
I had siblings that I was working with too, so yeah, it was a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. Anybody else?
My mom was very good keeping papers and stuff, and so my sisters luckily the three of us get along really good and everything and no problem. And we each got certain items and it just had a sale.
An estate sale company came in or garage sale?
We did it ourselves.
Right.
And we had a sale, but, but luckily my mom cooperated too. She wanted to go into assisted living.
Oh, that's nice.
She didn't want to live alone anymore instead.
Good for her. Anybody else have to deal with it?
I did, but I was lucky enough to have a good family, 7 brothers and sisters. And it was all different states. So my sister and I got together and asked who wanted what.
Right.
And then whatever else we just gave away.
Got it. Yeah. Anybody else want to share? So we've had, again, with my mom, she's got blue painter's tape on the back of certain items that I get or my brother gets. Things that have not necessarily a lot of value to them, but sentimental value more than anything else. I like this piece, he liked that piece, so on and so forth, and a lot of it we don't care about. If you haven't read the book, it's called Your Kids Don't Want Your Stuff. It's out there. Your kids typically don't want your stuff. Sometimes they will take your stuff because they feel obligated that they have to take it out of respect to you. And I've got things in my house that are heirlooms that came down for 2 or 3 generations that we haven't touched in 30 years. And I doubt we're ever going to touch. And if my mom knew that we were going to find a new home for it, she would be very upset with that. Okay? So there are companies like Goldilocks and others that can do what I'll call as estate liquidation. There's a couple of different ways that we do that or they do that. One of them, and it's not a garage sale. Garage sales tend to be do-it-yourself. You get some people that come and will buy some things. You typically are just looking for a nice way to get rid of stuff at pennies on the dollar, typically. The estate sale people and liquidation companies, they come in and look at it from a business perspective. They will look at things, and they want to make a certain amount when they go ahead and sell your stuff. Sometimes it's $2,000, $2,500, $3,000, because they will spend 2 or 3 or 4 days lining everything up and putting things online or having people come through the property. If you're able to have people come through the property, it's a very laborious process, a dirty process. And they want to get paid for that. So the way I look at estate sales and auctions is if you can basically cover the cost of throwing away what stuff doesn't sell and maybe cover a part of your move, then you're doing well. You're typically not going to get wealthy in an estate sale unless you have some really nice heirloom products. I've seen Picassos in homes that the kids said, yeah, that's a Picasso. Okay, well, a Picasso is going to be sold by a higher-end art house in town, and it's going to have some value to it. But normally, there's not a lot of Picassos or Declaration of Independence hidden behind the dogs playing poker in most people's homes. Okay, but you just never know. So having somebody who knows what they're doing to look through things really, really makes sense.
I just had one thing. I mean, just as a personal story. Kids will take practical things they can use, and they will take the 1 or 2 sentimental things that may not mean anything to you. So having that conversation prior, like mine was a pair of boots that my mom had bronzed for my father. He had worn the soles off these boots 4 or 5 times, had them resold, and so I was responsible for stealing them out of the closet, and she went and got them bronzed just like we bronzed our kids' baby shoes, right? But full-size adult boots. So that meant a lot to me because of the sentimental value of that whole gift-giving experience. So talk to your kids. Walk through that process with them. Use it as a fun thing. I mean, it can definitely – I firmly believe a bottle of wine is almost imperative to have that conversation with your kids because it makes them a little bit more relaxed. But if that's not your thing, just make it as fun as possible. Like, hey, eventually I'm not going to be here, so let's have this conversation. Is there anything you want? And no is an okay answer because I'm going to start cleaning it up so you don't have to. And I talk about that with accounts, financial stuff, all of it.
The heartbreaking thing is that I've got clients right now that I'm working with. She has Parkinson's. She's fallen a bunch of times. She's in and out of rehab. They moved to a senior living community. They took a lot of their personal furniture with them, but they came from a house was of a 4,000 square foot house. And they didn't want to have an estate sale. They needed to get things done quickly. They wanted to get the house on the market. When I tell you a company called Junk King came in, When I tell you that they took 4 of those big, huge, what do you call them? Dumpsters of stuff out of that house, you wouldn't believe what they took out. And Don said to me the other day, he goes, I wish I was there to oversee that, because there's a lot of stuff that we would like to have taken with us, or stuff that we wanted to donate, but it all got trashed. And that's the heartbreaking side of it, is that a lot of the stuff that you don't give away or doesn't get sold goes to the dump. That's the harsh reality of it. So let's think about what we can do to help be proactive as it relates to that, so that stuff that we've worked so hard to accumulate doesn't get trashed and other people can enjoy it. I want to give away things to my kids that they can enjoy while I'm still around to watch them to enjoy it. But even if that's not the case, I'd like them to have some of that stuff, whatever it is that they want. So that was my lesson most recently, and he told me that again last week. I wish I was there to take care of it. He can't find the remote for one of his ceiling fans. He can't find, they took the gas shutoff key from the floor and tossed it. Okay, they didn't know. They were just told to clean everything out of the house. They did their job. So stuff, it happens. Okay. Anything else that I didn't cover that we should cover? Any questions? So I hope you found this helpful. Drew will hang around. Stacy will hang around for a little bit. There's literature tables on the side tables. Feel free to grab anything that you want. Go to our website. There's tons of information on there. Again, OFallonTV has a lot of the talks that we've done in O'Fallon on the website, as well as on YouTube, and you can also find them on our website. There's the next official one, and Dalton, I was going to ask you, because we talked about a potential February date, a bonus program. Is that something, did you look at that date yet?
Yes, and as long as we're working it out with Senior Center and Aging Ahead, as long as the date and time works out and they don't have anything currently planned for that, then we'd like to
Do you have that date in your phone?
February 12th.
February 12th. Okay. So on February 12th, we have a bonus program. Normally, we only meet March through December. I say only, okay, 10 months. We're doing a bonus program in February. And the reason we skip January, February tends to be because of weather. Okay, and our crowds tend to be less. Now, this year it would have been December typically that we had a bad December, but we can't time it. But Oasis, which is a nonprofit organization that does education throughout the St. Louis area, I approached them and we talked about them offering a program. So they're going to come in under our umbrella, but it's Oasis coming in. And they're going to be talking about online protection and things along those as it relates to internet and making sure that we protect our identity and everything else. So that's going to be February 12th at 10 o'clock here. And then we start up our traditional programming in March, March 18th. It's called Sleep, a Good Occupation. So Washington University is coming back to talk about sleep and how all of that can help with health and wellness and things along those lines. So Pat Nellis, who came here last time, if you happen to see her, will be back again talking about sleep. Highly recommend that you come to that. Dalton, we did talk about, we love this venue. So we're going to make the suggestion that maybe this be our venue for this room. Acoustically, it's great. We don't have the kitchen, which can make a little noise from time to time. So we would like to suggest that that be considered, because I think we like this space really well. Okay? So anything else? All right. So if you don't mind, yes, ma'am.
I was not able to find that book, The Other Conversation.
We couldn't either. We'll have to get clarity from Sean. I don't know.
All right.
I don't think he knew.
Sean's making stuff up.
Yeah.
So we'll find out that. The Other Talk.
The Other Talk, AARP.
Oh, I actually have that. I actually have that book. The Other Talk, AARP. There is so that's the talk from the parents to the children. There's a book written called That's Not What I Meant, which is a book for the children to communicate with their older adult parents. Okay? We're not supposed to let you know as older adults as there's a book out there coaching our kids as to how to have these conversations. But it's out there, and it all talks about control and legacy and how that's important to us as older adults. It's the two main motivators, according to David Soley is the name of the author, that talks about control and legacy and how we have to consider that when it comes to conversations to get what we want as kids from our parents. So if you still need a Christmas gift, go to Amazon. And you can get it from Amazon, give it to 1 or 2 or 3 or how many kids you want subtly.
Maybe give them something else also. I don't think
But that would be a cute, subtle way to let them know they need to chill out. All right. Yes.
I got a book, I'm Dead, Now What?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And it's fantastic.
Really?
Yes, it's just really good. And it's not legal, anything.
Yeah.
But everything's in there, all your accounts, where everything's at, where they find the key to something.
It's like a manual, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a manual of what to do, you know.
Okay. Well, if you want some light reading, you can get I'm Dead, Now What? For the holidays. All sorts of good, fun reading we could have. All right, so February 12th, 10 o'clock. Let's assume we're going to be here unless you hear otherwise. We will, in turn, email you. The city has some great reminders as well, so we will let you know. But just assume February 12th here at 10 o'clock and then March 18th for Pat Nillis. We will have an entire schedule on our website. I keep pushing the website because it's loaded with chock good stuff. We have all of the programming, not only in O'Fallon, but the 4 other municipalities where we do these talks. So if for some reason you missed the O'Fallon talk on sleep, you could go to Brentwood or Chesterfield or Sunset Hills, or I'm missing one, Maryland Heights. Okay, so go to the website. All right, so if you don't mind, feedback forms, bring up your frequent learner card if you have one. If not, I've got them. And thank you very much for coming. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Stay safe, stay warm. Thank you. Thank you.